قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him. فصل, section. يجب على كل مسلم حفظ إسلامه وصونه عما يفسده. It is obligatory upon every Muslim. Preserving one's Islam is obligatory on every Muslim. وصونه, and protecting it. عما يفسده ويبطله ويقطعه, from anything that ruins it and nullifies it and severs it. وهو الردة, that's apostasy. والعياذ بالله تعالى, and refuge is sought with Allah the Exalted. قال النووي, Imam an-Nawawi said, وغيره, as well as others, الردة أفحش أنواع الكفر. Apostasy is the worst type of blasphemy. الشرح أن الردة أقبح أنواع الكفر. The explanation is that apostasy is the ugliest type of blasphemy. Doesn't mean it's absolutely the ugliest or absolutely the worst. It means it's very bad. Just like when you say to someone, that's the worst thing you could have done. And it doesn't mean that's the worst thing that he could have done. Absolutely. لأن الردة تذهب كل الحسنات, because apostasy eradicates all good deeds. وتبقى السيئات, although the bad deeds will remain. وَلَوْ رَجَعَ إِلَى الْإِسْلَامِ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ, even if someone comes back to Islam after that, لَا تَرْجِعُ لَهُ الْحَسَنَاتِ الَّتِي كَانَ عَمِلَهَا, the good deeds that he had performed shall not return. They shall not return to him. وَتَبْقَى السَّيِّئَاتِ, and the bad deeds will remain. فَإِن تَابَ مِنْهَا ذَهَبَتْ, and if he repents from those, they will go away. وَلَيْسَ مَعْنَى الرِّدَّةُ أَفْحَشُ أَنْوَاعِ الْكُفْرِ أَنَّ كُلَّ أَنْوَاعِ الرِّدَّةِ أَشَدُّ مِنْ كُفْرِ الْكَافِرِ الْأَصْلِيِّ. And saying that apostasy is the worst type of blasphemy does not mean that every instance of apostasy is worse than the blasphemy of an original blasphemer. لأن كفر الكافر الأصلي قد يكون أشد من كفر المرتد, because an original blasphemer's blasphemy might be worse than an apostate's blasphemy. فليس معنى قول النووي المذكور أن الردة أشد أنواع الكفر كفرا. Therefore, an-Nawawi's mentioned statement that therefore, an-Nawawi's mentioned statement does not mean that apostasy is the worst blasphemy in terms of blasphemy. إنما مراده شدة قبحها. He merely means to express its great abhorrence. في أنها خروج من الإسلام الذي هو الحق إلى الباطل الذي هو الكفر, because it is an exiting from Islam, which is the truth, to what is invalid, to the falsehood, which is blasphemy. كما يقال, it's like it being said, الفسوق أقبح من العالم منه من الجاهل. A major sin is worse, is uglier from a scholar than it is from a layman. So that statement wouldn't mean that any deed a scholar does is always going to be uglier than any deed that a layman does, any bad deed. وأشد أنواع الكفر تعطيل. The worst type of blasphemy is atheism, God denial. وهو قول الشيوعي. That's the saying of the communist. La ilaha wal hayatu maddah. They said there's no God and life is all material. So the communist Communism, as you know, that's a type of government, of invalid, worldly, secular way of ruling, where they remove individual ownership and they make everyone partners in everything. So that's why they call it communism. Shuyu'i, yani, from the letters mean to be widespread. And they say that socialism is a type of communism. So this communism, it appears to be the atheist choice of government, the atheist choice of government. And if you ever talk to an atheist who dispraises Islam for our practice of warfare, our religious practice of warfare, and he would say Islam was spread by the sword, for example. Those atheists, whenever they take control, whenever they get power, then they commit genocide. Muslims don't even do genocide. Those ones commit genocide. It's known about them. And they do very, very horrible things. And not only that, while they are practicing communism, while they're making their people practice communism, meaning while they take away individual ownership from the people, those people who are in power are living lives of luxury and eating mounds of meat. So Sheikh says, وَهُوَ قَوْلُ الشُّيُوعِي. This is the saying of the communist. La ilaha wal hayatu maddah. They said there's no God and life is material. They mean everything is nature. Everything's by nature. وَقَوْلُ أَهْلِ الْوَحْدَةِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ جُمْلَةُ الْعَالَمِ. And also amongst the worst of blasphemy, yani, also the worst of blasphemy is what the pantheists said, that God is the world in totality. وَعَقِيدَةُ الْحُلُولِ. And also the worst blasphemy is the creed of the so-called God bodies. أي أن الله يحل في غيره, meaning that they believe that Allah dwells in others. كاليشرطية القائلين بأن الله يدخل في كل شخص. Like the Yashrutis who say that Allah enters in anyone or everyone. ذكر أو أنثى, whether male or female. حتى قال قائلهم في بعض الأشخاص. Even one of them would say about some people, أنت الله, you are God. وهذا الجدار الله, and this wall is God. وهم فرقة من متأخر الشاذلية. These Yashrutis are a cult that emerged from the latter day Shadhilis. That's a Sufi order. So they deviated from a true Sufi order. Inharafu an usuli tawheed. They diverged, deviated from the fundamentals of monotheism. الذي هو عقيدة كل مشايخ أهل الله الذين عملوا الطرق. That monotheism, which is the creed of all the sheikhs of the people of God, those who practice the tariqas, al-Rifa'i, al-Rifa'i, والشيخ عبد القادر والشيخ أبي الحسن الشاذلي وغيرهم, like Imam al-Rifa'i and Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Jilani or Jailani, and you could say it in other ways, and Sheikh Abul Hassan al-Shadhili and others. So, subhanallah, just recently clicked for me the parallels or the similarities between the atheists and the pantheists and the so-called God bodies. So the atheist is who is the one who says there's no God. The pantheist is the one who says everything is God. And the so-called God body is the one who says I'm God, or he says God is in me. So I'll take what's familiar to me. Those so-called 5%ers. Those are the ones that I know. that I'm familiar with, that I've encountered in my life and talked to. So when I thought about it, I said, yes, really, they are like atheists. When they're saying, I'm God, it's like he's saying there's no God. He's not God, really, and he's not worshiping something other than himself. He's not acknowledging something other than himself as being higher than him. So then he'd be an atheist of a sort. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. So Sheikh says these are the worst of blasphemy: atheism, pantheism, and believing in being a God body. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, the author, may Allah have mercy upon him, said, وَقَدْ كَثُرَ فِي هَذَا الزَّمَانِ التَّسَاهُلُ فِي الْكَلَامِ. In this time, negligence in speech has become abundant. حتى إنه يخرج من بعضهم ألفاظ تخرجهم عن الإسلام. There, or to the extent that there does indeed issue forth from some expressions that take them out of Islam. ولا يرون ذلك ذنبا فضلا عن كونه كفرا. And they don't see that as a sin, let alone that it's blasphemy. وذلك مصداق قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. That is the verifier of what the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam. This word misdaq, that's called, this type of word in Arabic is called ism Allah. Ism Allah, the name of a tool. Like miftah, a key. A miftah, you hear it's the same pattern. Misdaq, miftah. A miftah, that's a key. It's a tool. That's the tool of opening. Miftah is a tool of fatah, tool of opening. A misdaq is a tool of sidq, honesty, a tool of honesty. But that's not easy to translate, so we're just going to say, وَذَلِكَ مِصْدَاقُ قَوْلِهِ. That's the verifier of what the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ. Indeed, the slave will certainly utter the word, يعني the word of blasphemy. لا يرى بها بأسا, without seeing anything wrong with it. يتكلم لا يرى, he speaks without seeing. يهوي بها في النار 70 خريفا, and by it, يعني because of it, he falls into the fire for 70 autumns. أي مسافة 70 عاما, عاما في النزول, meaning the distance of 70 years in descent. Subhanallah. I'm sure you thought about that by now, what that means. Because I don't think any of us who are listening are 70. Any of us now are 70 years old. So our entire lives that we have lived until now would be engulfed in this falling. We'd still be falling. وَذَلِكَ مُنْتَهَى جَهَنَّمْ. That's the extent of hell, يعني the bottom of hell. وَهُوَ خَاصٌ بِالْكُفَّارِ. And that extent, that bottom, is reserved for the blasphemers. وَالْحَدِيثُ رَوَاهُ التِّرْمِذِي وَحَسَّنَهُ. And this hadith, at-Tirmidhi narrated it, and he deemed it fair. الشرح, the explanation. في هذا الزمان كثير من الناس يطلقون ألسنتهم بالكلام الفاسد. In this time, many people let their tongues run with corrupt speech. المخرج من الإسلام, corrupt speech that takes one out of Islam. وَلَا يَرَوْنَ ذَلِكَ خُرُوجًا مِنَ الْإِسْلَامِ. Although they don't see that as an exiting from Islam. They say what takes them out of Islam while they don't see that they have been taken out of Islam. بَلْ لَا يَرَوْنَهُ ذَنْبًا. In fact, they don't even see that they committed a sin. وَيَظُنُّونَ أَنَّهُمْ بَعْدُ مُسْلِمُونَ. And they see, meaning they deem, they reckon that they are still Muslims. وهذا الذي يحصل من بعض الناس مصداق قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And this, which happens to some people, is the verifier of what the Prophet ﷺ said. Inna al-abda la yatakallamu bil kalimah. Indeed, the slave will certainly utter the word of blasphemy. La yara biha ba'tha, without seeing anything wrong with it. Yahwi biha fin nari sab'ina kharifa, and by it he falls into the fire 70 autumns. أي أن الإنسان قد يتكلم بكلمة لا يراها ضارة له, meaning that a human might say a word without seeing it harmful to himself. ولا يعتبرها معصية, and he doesn't see it as a sin. معصية يستوجب بها النزول إلى قعر جهنم. He doesn't see it as a sin that dictates descent to the bottom of the pit of hell. الذي هو محل الكفار, that place, that bottom, which is the spot for the blasphemers. لأنه لا يصل إلى قعر جهنم الذي هو مسافة 70 عاما في النزول عصاة المسلمين. Because the sinful Muslims, they do not reach the bottom of the pit of hell. That bottom which is a distance of 70 years in descent. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him. وفي معناه حديث رواه البخاري ومسلم. And with this same meaning is a hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari and Muslim. الشرح, the explanation. Al-hadithu, the hadith in question. Huwa, it is. إن العبد ليتكلم بالكلمة. Indeed, the slave will certainly speak the word. ما يتبين فيها, without distinguishing it. يزل بها في النار, and because of it he slips into the fire. أبعد مما بين المشرق والمغرب, further than what's between east and west. رواه الشيخان البخاري ومسلم. That hadith is narrated by the two sheikhs, Al-Bukhari and Muslim. فحديث الترمذي مفسر لحديث الشيخين. Therefore, the hadith of At-Tirmidhi interprets the hadith of the two sheikhs, because the hadith of At-Tirmidhi specifies the falling distance, while the hadith of the two sheikhs makes that distance obscure. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, said the author, may Allah have mercy upon him. وهذا الحديث دليل على أنه لا يشترط في الوقوع في الكفر معرفة الحكم. And this hadith is evidence that knowing the judgment is not a condition for falling into blasphemy. ولا شرح الصدر به, nor acceptance of the heart, reception of the chest, nor for one's heart to be receptive. That's not a condition for falling into blasphemy. ولا اعتقاد معنى اللفظ, nor believing the meaning of what was uttered. That's not a condition. كما يقول كتاب فقه السنة, as opposed to what that book فقه السنة says. وكذلك لا يشترط في الوقوع في الكفر عدم الغضب. And likewise, lack of anger is not a condition for falling into blasphemy. كما أشار إلى ذلك النووي, like النووي signaled to. قال, he said, he gave an example. لو غضب رجل على ولده أو غلامه, had a man been furious with his child or slave boy, فضربه ضربا شديدا, and then he beat him severely. فقال له رجل, and then someone said to him, ألست مسلما? Aren't you a Muslim? فقال لا, and then he said no, معتمدا, on purpose. كفر, he blasphemed. Sorry, متعمدا, on purpose. كفر, then he blasphemed. But if you caught that with me, don't let that slide, please. Saw that I said it wrong, and then don't say anything. Don't do that, please. وقاله غيره من حنفية وغيرهم, and others have also said that amongst Hanafis and others, yani who said the same case, not necessarily the same example. So what's the condition then for falling into blasphemy? Is to be sane, pubescent, according to Shafi'i school, and not forced, and knowing the meaning of the blasphemy when saying it, without a slip of the tongue. Yani saying what you want to have said. You said what you wanted to say. You knew what it meant. No one forced you. When I say you said what you wanted to say, it means your tongue didn't slip. You knew what it meant, so you weren't unaware of the meaning. You did it on purpose, so no one forced you. And you were sane, and you were pubescent. Then you committed blasphemy. All those other things are not conditions. Knowing the judgment, knowing, believing in what you said, or not being angry, none of those are conditions. الشرح, the explanation. هذا معناه أن الإنسان قد يخرج من الإسلام من غير أن يقصد الخروج منه. This means that a person could leave Islam without the goal of leaving Islam. وَمِنْ غَيْرِ أَنْ يَسْتَبْدِلَ بِهِ دِينًا غَيْرَهُ, and without exchanging his religion, without replacing his religion for another religion. كما هو حال كثير ممن يدعون الصوفية, like the case of many who claim to be Sufis. وَهُمْ يَتَخَبَّطُونَ فِي الْكُفْرِ, and those are stumbling in blasphemy. أي إن كان الشخص يعرف أن هذا القول إن كان الشخص يعرف أن هذا القول الكفري الذي قاله كفر أو لا يعرف. Meaning, if this person knows that this statement is blasphemous, the statement that he said, yani, whether the person knew that this blasphemous statement that he said is blasphemy or he didn't know, يحكم عليه بالكفر, he will be judged with blasphemy. إنما الشرط معرفة معنى اللفظ, merely the condition is knowing the meaning of the expression, along with other things that I mentioned for you. Here, Sheikh simplified, as if he's saying, it's a given that we're talking about someone sane and his tongue didn't slip and nobody forced him. Merely the condition is knowing the meaning of the expression. وكذلك ليس شرطا أن يعتقد بقلبه معنى هذا اللفظ. And also, it's not a condition that one believes in his heart in the meaning of the expression. Here, the sheikhs have quoted a Hanafi scholar, Mullah Ali al-Qari, rahimahullah ta'ala, may Allah raise his rank. I love Mullah Ali al-Qari very much, mashallah. قال الكونوي, he said, Al-Kunawi said, ولو تلفظ بكلمة الكفر طائعا غير معتقد له, had someone pronounced a word of blasphemy, يعني, with his own agency, يعني, nobody forced him to do so, he did so by his own volition, without believing in what he said though, يكفر, he blasphemes. لأنه راض بمباشرته, because this person is accepting to engage in blasphemy. وَإِن لَمْ يَرْضَ بِحُكْمِهِ, even if he doesn't accept the judgment of the blasphemy, he accepted to engage in the blasphemy. كَالْهَازِلِ بِهِ, like the one who's joking. فَإِنَّهُ يَكْفُرُ, he blasphemes. وَإِن لَمْ يَرْضَ بِحُكْمِهِ, even if he doesn't accept the judgment of blasphemy. وَلَا يُعْذَرُ بِالْجَهْلِ, and he's not excused by the ignorance. That's from the explanation of Al-Fiqh al-Akbar by Mullah Ali al-Qari. And they have some other quotes here soon, inshallah, on the Tuesday lesson, Tuesday 9 p.m. in Sarih al-Bayan. Sheikh's going to go into many details like this, quotes from scholars. So I'll stick to the script here. But you know that, like, this is the case of the comedians. They see that, and their supporters, they see that just because it's a joke, it should be overlooked because it's not serious. You know that that's how they are. Like when Will Smith smacked Chris Rock, right? All the people said, it was only a joke, man. It was only a joke. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. بل بمجرد أنه قال ذلك بإرادة وهو يفهم المعنى كفر. Rather, by merely saying that with volition, yani with will, wanting to do it, while understanding the meaning. So here Sheikh added more conditions. Kafar, he blasphemed. وَخَرَجَ مِنَ الْإِسْلَامِ, and he goes out of Islam. So then, here we'll take a note from the Sheikh. We'll take a note from the Sheikh here, which is that he didn't list all the conditions for falling into apostasy. He summarized by mentioning one or two. When I say one or two, meaning in one spot, he mentioned one, which is knowing the meaning of the statement. Knowing the meaning of the statement. He said, إِنَّمَا الشَّرْطُ مَعْرِفَةُ مَعْنَى اللَّفْظ. And إِنَّمَا means merely. It's for limitation. He mentioned one condition here, and then he kept on talking. And here he mentioned two conditions. One, he already said, understanding the meaning, and he said, doing it willingly, with volition. That means not being forced. And there's still some other conditions he didn't mention, like it's not a slip of the tongue, and you are sane. So then you know how to summarize now if you need to summarize that, and you know how to say a few more details if you need to. وَقَدْ شَذَّ Sayyid Sabiq, and Sayyid Sabiq deviated here. فَإِنَّ لَهُ كِتَابًا سَمَّاهُ فِقْهَ السُّنَّةِ. He has a book that he named فِقْهُ السُّنَّةِ. يقول فيه, therein he says, في كتاب الردة, in the book of apostasy, إن المسلم لا يعتبر خارجا عن الإسلام ولا يحكم عليه بالردة إلا إذا انشرح صدره بالكفر وطمأن قلبه. He said, quote, indeed the Muslim is not considered out of Islam, nor is he judged with apostasy unless his chest was receptive to the blasphemy and his heart was tranquil. وَدَخَلَ فِي دِينٍ غَيْرِ الْإِسْلَامِ بِالْفِعْلِ, and he actually entered into a religion other than Islam. So he said exactly the opposite of that case there. And he said it in a way that someone would think that he's talking with knowledge. انشرح صدره وطمأن قلبه. Then he was ignorant here. ويكفي في الرد عليه الحديث الذي رواه البخاري ومسلم والترمذي. And the hadith that's narrated by Al-Bukhari, Muslim, and At-Tirmidhi is enough to refute him. Yani, if you heard someone quoting him or saying this type of talk, because he's not the only one. In this time of ours, a number of contemporaries have taken this case. The origin of this case is from a Shiite, a Zaydi Shiite. It's called Shawkani, a Shawkani, and they copied from him. Sheikh says it's enough of a shame for them, or it's enough of a shame on them that they copied from a Shiite. Yes, he did claim that he became a Sunni. He claimed that he became a Sunni. ويكفي في الرد عليه وقد مر ذكر حديث الترمذي آنفا, and the hadith of at-Tirmidhi just passed. وموضع الشاهد فيه قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يرى بها بأسا. And the point of evidence in the hadith is when the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, not seeing anything wrong with it. أي لأنه يدل على أن من الكلام ما يخرج الإنسان من الإسلام من غير فرق بين أن يكون منشرح البال أو أن يكون غير منشرح البال لذلك القول. Meaning, because this proves that there is talk that takes a person out of Islam without there being any difference between the person being receptive of that, that means accepting of that or approving of that, or not approving of that statement. Even amongst the kuffar, for example, if someone goes out publicly and he threatens the president, even if it's a joke, they will punish him. Or if someone made terroristic threats as a joke, they will punish him. So blasphemy is worse than that. وَيَجُوزُ عَلَى مُقْتَضَى قَوْلِهِ, and according to what this Sayyid Sabiq is saying, it's permissible or possible أن يقول الرجل أي قول من أقوال الكفر, for a person, for a man to say any saying of blasphemy. ويدافع عن نفسه بقوله أنا ما كنت منشرح البال, and then he would defend himself by saying, I did not accept this. I don't believe in this, what I said. إنما نطقت بذلك باللسان فقط. I merely uttered it with my tongue only. It didn't go further than my tongue. It didn't go deeper than my mere tongue. فيعفى من الاستتابة. And then, so according to Sayyid Sabiq, this person would be exonerated from it being demanded of him to repent. Al-istitaba. That it's demanded of him that he repents. It's part of what the caliph will do. He will demand of that apostate to repent. ثم يرتب ثم ترتب القتل عليه, and then he would also be pardoned from the execution that goes along with committing apostasy. Yani, so then that person would say apostasy with his tongue, and then there shouldn't be, despite this apostasy, any demand for him to repent from blasphemy. And then after saying blasphemy, there wouldn't be any execution due on him, although he said blasphemy. فيكون ذلك هدما لباب من أبواب الشرع. So then this would be demolishing one of the chapters of the sacred law. وهو أحكام المرتدين, which is the chapter of the rules concerning the apostates. وما يترتب عليها, and whatever is based on that. Meaning انقطاع النكاح بين الزوجين, such as the interruption of marriage between the two spouses. وانقطاع التوارث, and being severed from inheritance, being disqualified from inheritance. ومن قتلهم بعد الاستتابة إن لم يرجعوا, and being executed after the demand of repentance if they don't come back. فإنه يجب على الحاكم ذلك. Indeed, all of that is obligatory on the Muslim ruler. كما قتل أبو بكر امرأة ارتدت. Just as Abu Bakr executed a woman who committed apostasy. And it's obligatory on the ruler. He has to. You can't let that go. وكما قتل رجل من أصحاب رسول الله ولد له. And just like one man who was a companion of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam killed a mother of his children. You know that means slave woman. Or else we would have said his wife. He killed his wife She wasn't his wife. She was the mother of his children. That means a slave woman. So keep that on deck. If we ever say the mother of his children, that's what it means in our religious lessons. كانت تقع في رسول الله. She used to take shots at the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. فيزجرها فلا تنزجر, and he would forbid her and she would not take heed. فأخبر رسول الله بقتلها. Once the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was informed about a dead woman, which is this one, this dead slave woman. قال الرجل أنا قتلتها. So the man, he confessed when the messenger, he implored the believers to, that for the killer to come forth. He, one might say, he begged the believers that let the killer come forth. قال الرجل أنا قتلتها يا رسول الله. The man said, I killed her, O Messenger of Allah. كانت تقع فيك. She used to take shots at you, O Messenger of Allah. فأزجرها فلا تنزجر. And I used to scold her, but she would not take heed. He was a blind man. فقال الرسول, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Ishhadu anna damaha hadar. Hadar. He said, bear witness, O people, that there is no blood money for her. Ay la qimata lah. There is no payment for her killing. Rawahum al-Bayhaqi. Al-Bayhaqi narrated both of those. What are both of those? Here, Sheikh told us something about Abu Bakr, and then he told us something about this blind man here who killed his slave woman. وروى الأول أيضا الدارقطني, and the first one was narrated also by الدارقطني. وروى الثاني أيضا أبو داود, and the second one was also narrated by Abu Dawood. That's what you're able to do when you memorize those hadith books. When you took all those hadith books and you memorized them. And then when you're someone like Sheikh Abdullah, khalas, you're just going to produce those like a computer or faster than a computer. وليس في قول الله تعالى من كفر بالله من بعد إيمانه إلا من أكره وقلبه مطمئن بالإيمان ولكن من شرح بالكفر صدرا فعليهم غضب من الله دليل على ما ادعاه سيد سابق. And this verse of the Quran, this 106th verse of Surah An-Nahl, does not have any evidence for what Sayyid Sabiq claimed. This verse that contains the meaning, whoever blasphemed, whoever disbelieved in God after his faith, after having or displaying faith, he blasphemes. He deserves the torture of Allah, except who was compelled while his heart was tranquil, serene with faith. On the other hand, anyone who was receptive of the blasphemy in his chest, then they are deserving of the torture of Allah. This doesn't have anything that Sayyid Sabiq claimed. لأن هذا ورد في المكره على كلمة الكفر, because this came concerning the one who was compelled to say the word of blasphemy. فإنه لا يكفر, this one does not blaspheme. إن كان نطقه بالكفر بدون انشراح الصدر لذلك الكفر, as long as the blasphemy that he uttered was without his heart being receptive to it. وإنما يكفر هذا المكره إن انشرح صدره حالة النطق بالكفر. And this compelled one would only blaspheme if his heart was receptive when he pronounced the blasphemy. لما قاله من الكفر, if it was receptive of the kufr, of the blasphemy that he said. كما جاء عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, like what came from the messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, أنه قال لعمار بن ياسر, that he said to Ammar ibn Yasir, هل كنت شارحا صدرك حين قلت ما قلت أم لا? Was your heart accepting of what you said when you said it or not? فقال لا. He said it was not. Yani, this is when the Prophet asked if the person's heart accepted. This is when acceptance of the heart is a condition. In the case of compulsion, that's when acceptance of the heart is a condition. رواه الإمام ابن المنذر في كتابه الإشراف. Ibn al-Munzir narrated this report in his book Al-Ishraf. فحرف فحرف هذا الرجل سيد سابق كلام الله تعالى. And so this man, Sayyid Sabiq, distorted the speech of God. Exalted is he. وقال ما لم يقله عالم قط. And he said what no scholar ever said. فالضمير في قوله تعالى ولكن من شرح يعود إلى المكره الذي انشرح صدره حين النطق. When God said what means, however, anyone who was receptive, pronoun here refers to the one who was forced. Anyone who was receptive here is not for open for everyone. That's basically Sayyid Sabiq's point here. He's saying you don't leave Islam unless you accepted the blasphemy. So someone like him would produce this ayah. وَلَكِنْ مَنْ شَرَحَ بِالْكُفْرِ صَدْرًا فَعَلَيْهِمْ غَضَبٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ. Anyone who was receptive to the blasphemy, then this is the one who shall have the punishment of Allah. Shaykh is saying that's not open for everyone. That's special for the compelled one only, which is clarified by what's in the whole ayah. So then we wouldn't be surprised if someone is making this claim like Sayyid Sabiq, and then he just quotes this part of the ayah. ولكن من شرح بالكفر صدرا فعليهم غضب من الله. Anyone who was receptive of the blasphemy in his heart, then they deserve the punishment of Allah. We say to them, that's not open for everyone. That's distorting the meaning of the ayah. That's only for the compelled person. Read the rest of the ayah. من كفر بالله من بعد إيمانه إلا من أكره, except who was compelled. وقلبه مطمئن بالإيمان, while his heart was tranquil with faith. فهذا الذي يكفر. This is the one who blasphemes. فهذا الذي يشترط فيه الانشراح. The compelled one is the one for whom acceptance is a condition. أما غير المكره فليس محل هذه الآية. But concerning other than the compelled one, he's not the subject of this verse. This verse doesn't apply to him. وقد ذكر الفقهاء الحنفيون والشافعيون وغيرهم أمثلة لثبوت الكفر. وقد ذكر الفقهاء الحنفيون والشافعيون وغيرهم أمثلة لثبوت الكفر بالقول حين الغضب. And the Hanafi jurists and the Shafi'i jurists and others have mentioned examples of the confirmation of blasphemy by a statement. حين الغضب, while angry. The Shafi'is and the Hanafis, they have documented that the anger will not excuse the blasphemy. مما يشهد لعدم اشتراط انشراح الصدر لكلمة الكفر لغير المكره. They mentioned that this is not a condition. أمثلة لثبوت الكفر بالقول حين الغضب مما يشهد لعدم اشتراط لعدم اشتراط انشراح الصدر لكلمة الكفر لغير المكره. Yani, so the Shafi'is and the Hanafis, they have mentioned that anger is not an excuse. Yani, anger is not a condition. That anger is not a condition. So one's heart is devoid of accepting the blasphemy. But also, what if he's not angry? Does he have to also be not angry? Or does he have to also be angry? No. Even if he's not angry and he doesn't accept the blasphemy, he still can blaspheme. من ذلك أن إنسانا لو ضرب ابنه أو غلامه أي عبده ضربا شديدا فقال له رجل ألست مسلما. An example of that is that a person, had he severely beaten his son or slave boy, and then so someone said to him, "Aren't you a Muslim?" فقال لا متعمدا, and then he said on purpose, "No." كفر, he blasphemed. ذكره النووي في روضة الطالبين في كتاب الردة. And Nawawi mentioned that in روضة الطالبين, in the book of apostasy. ومعنى قوله متعمدا أي بغير سبق لسان. And when he said on purpose, he meant without a slip of the tongue. وهذا مثال من كثير من أمثلة تكفير من نطق بلفظ من ألفاظ الردة. And this is one example of many concerning the charge of blasphemy for someone who pronounced apostasy, وهو غضبان غير منشرح البال, though he's angry and not accepting truly in his heart what he says. لما يقوله حيث إنهم كفروه لقوله وهو غاضب لست مسلما, because they deemed him as a blasphemer for saying, although angry, I'm not a Muslim. Well, it looks like we should stop there.